who loved cake and secrets, Liz, who loved reading, anytime, anywhere. And then there was Brian. Brian, it had to be said, loved unending small bleat, and he loved to direct it at Hilary, interrupting what everyone knew was her favourite daydreaming and list-making time, twilight. "How's the grass there, Hilary?" "Much the same as yesterday, Brian. And yourself?" "Same old, same old. Any plans for the weekend? Will you be making more of your oddball lists and whatnot?" "I will." "You're a gas woman. Or should I say, you're a grass woman." "Maybe we should leave the comedy to the comedians, Brian," Hilary suggested, hoping he might leave her in peace. But Brian wasn't in a rush to go anywhere. "I know, but I'm on a roll here. My jokes aren't that bad, like, for a sheep at least." With the usual roll of her eyes and a hint of a grin on her face, Hilary made her excuses and wandered off to her patch in the field. Chapter 3. Counting Sheep. In order to understand Hilary, we should really have a close look at her friends and those who knew her the best. Her field was a bit like your classroom, or maybe your kitchen at dinner time. It was busy, full of chatter, and there were lots of comings and goings. The sheep in this field, it had to be said, had a good kind of life. They were tended to by Farmer Jimmy, who owned the field. He was a kind man who loved his wife Orla. He also loved jelly beans, and was forever plucking them out of his pocket and popping them into his mouth before launching into a conversation, mostly with himself. He was often seen chewing while chatting about the latest tractor brochure that had landed on his doorstep. Farmer Jimmy loved tractors. He loved the shine of them, their smell, their big, thick wheels, and the way they rumbled along the field like a tank going into battle. He would often regale the sheep with his knowledge of the tractor world, telling them that there were 16 million tractors all over the world, and, get this, the biggest tractors could have up to 12 tyres, with each of them the height of an adult human. The sheep were intrigued and listened intently while munching grass. They learned that tractors weren't as slow as people thought. In fact, the fastest tractor could go more than 75 miles per hour. Out of all the animals on the farm, Jimmy loved his woolly friends the most. In fact, it was Jimmy who gave the sheep their names, and he seemed to know their likes and dislikes simply by looking at them. He was especially proud of Hilary, as he had never owned a multicoloured sheep before. The fact that she was such a curious and unique creature added to his interest in her and love of her. A typical working day saw him start his morning by leaving the house after a hearty breakfast, kissing Orla on the top of her head as she sipped her coffee, packing a fresh bag of jelly beans into his jacket, jumping into his muddy green boots, and making his way down to the field to visit the sheep. He would lean over the fence, do his roll call, and chat away to them like they were people he might meet down in the local corner shop. He was quite certain that he spotted a flash of recognition in the sheep's eyes whenever he approached. He was right. The sheep did, in fact, have the ability to recognize both fellow sheep and humans. Farmer Jimmy also knew that sheep were much more intelligent than they were given credit for, and that, with a field of vision of 300 degrees, they could see behind themselves without turning. So, in some ways, they had eyes on the backs of their heads, and always knew when he was approaching. Hide and seek, as you might imagine, was impossible to play with them. And so, Farmer Jimmy got busy checking hooves and teeth and wool. Brian was never happy with all this poking and prodding, and used to give some back-talk, which everyone pretended not to enjoy as much as they did. Here would be a typical exchange.